Hello. I am honored and humbled to have this opportunity to moderate this distinguished panel before us. Today, we are in the midst of what I want to refer to as Black excellence, for which I give reverence to as I stand on the shoulders of giants. With that said, I would like to introduce the members of the panel to you. Dr. Arlene P. Macklin. Dr. Macklin is internationally recognized and recently chronicled in the History Makers for her outstanding achievement as an educator, researcher, administrator, and mentor. Dr. Arlene P. Macklin is a physicist by training and has spent the past 40 years in a combination of academic and government service positions. Her academic service includes more than 15 years of teaching at the levels of associate and full professors with administrative experience at the level of an associate dean of a college of arts and science and a director of research. She has also served as the director of several major research grants in excess of $10 million. She is currently the president and CEO of a nonprofit company called MacSmith STEM Enterprises, dedicated to increasing the numbers of minorities and women receiving degrees in STEM fields. Prior to this, Dr. Macklin served as the Senior Project Director for the Howard University Partnership Design and Development Project. Previously, she served as the Executive Director of Mid-Atlantic Consortium Center for Academic Excellence at Morgan State University that included 4 HBCUs in the Mid-Atlantic region and reported to a governing board, which included college presidents and high-level corporate and government officials. Dr. Macklin has an extraordinary track record for developing undergraduate and graduate programs in optical physics and optical engineering. She has developed numerous science education programs from K through 20 students. She has extensive experience developing and evaluating science and mathematics program for teachers and students in high school and post-secondary education. She has also worked with STEM township teachers in South Africa on the development of inquiry-based and hands-on learning. Dr. Macklin is a leader in developing opportunities in science and mathematics for minorities and ensuring that STEM students have a global education by supporting more than 200 students since 2004 with cultural immersion experiences in South Africa, Morocco, Egypt, Tunisia, China, Japan, and India. She has served as the Director of Diversity for an NSF-funded engineering research center. She is an active recruiter of undergraduate and graduate students for STEM programs throughout the nation. She has published more than 50 technical papers and abstracts in referred journals and has made more than 250 presentations and talks to technical audiences throughout the world, including the United States, Japan, South Africa, India, China, and Nigeria. Her current areas of research includes theoretical investigation of nanostructures and STEM research on new pedagogies for teaching and learning. Dr. Macklin received her BS in engineering physics from North Carolina A&T, her postbaccalaureate fellow at Bryn Mawr and Harvard College, her MS in theoretical nuclear physics from the University of Virginia, and her PhD in theoretical condensed matter physics from Howard University. Welcome, Dr. Macklin.
Well, thank you. I had no idea you were going to read all that, as I would have not sent it. It's not about me, it's about the students.
Absolutely. We also have on the panel Dr. Donna-Lee Granville, who's an assistant professor in sociology from Brooklyn College. Dr. Donna-Lee Granville is a sociologist who writes, studies, and teaches on issues of race, immigration, and culture. She is currently assistant professor of sociology at Brooklyn College, where she teaches courses such as the sociology of hip hop, urban Caribbean diaspora, and consumer society and culture, among others. Her first book, Making Americans: How the USA Fails New Black Citizens, is under contract with NYU press, and examines the naturalization process and perception of belonging held by Afro-Caribbean naturalized U.S. citizens. Dr. Granville also serves as Associate Director of the Roberta S. Matthews Center for Teaching and Learning, where she focuses on online teaching. Thank you and welcome, Dr. Granville. We also have Ms. Nicole Johnson, Assistant Dean of Opportunities Programs, TRIO Scholars Program Director, Chief Inclusivity Officer for NYU Tandon. Ms. Nicole Johnson is the Assistant Dean of Opportunities Program at NYU Tandon as the Assistant Dean for Opportunities Programs. Oversees all the administrative and program functions of the educational opportunity programs at NYU Tandon School of Engineering, including the TRIO Scholars, and coordinates the academic support services and retention initiatives for underrepresented groups to ensure that they have a meaningful experience at NYU, succeed, and go on to enter various engineering professions and graduate fields of study. Her efforts over the course of her more than 2 decades have resulted in more than $2 million in funding for initiatives targeting underrepresented groups. In addition, Nicole Johnson is one of 3 inaugural Chief Diversity Officers for the Office of Inclusive Excellence. In this role, she is responsible for strategic leadership, training, and instruction, assessment, and dispute resolution as it relates to inclusion, diversity, belonging, equity, and access at Tandon. Ms. Johnson also serves as the chair of 3 inclusion committees, 2 of which she helped to establish, which are the Women at Tandon, Black and Latino Men at Tandon, and Inclusion at Tandon. That focuses on increasing representation, retention, and success of the stated demographics through intentional initiatives geared towards building supportive environments for all. She believes that diversity, equity, inclusion should be viewed from an asset-based perspective, and higher education should provide its stakeholders with ongoing opportunities to build cultural proficiency. In addition, Ms. Johnson is an adjunct professor for the NYU Tandon Technology Management and Innovation Department, for which she also received her MS and MBA from. Last but not least, the only gentleman in the panel, we welcome Mr. Willie Rockward, Dr. Willie Rockward, Chair and Professor of Physics, Department of Physics and Engineering, Physics at Morgan State University, Baltimore, Maryland. Dr. Rockward has a unique combination of leadership from academic, professional, and community experiences. Since August 2018, he serves as professor and chair of the Department of Physics and Engineering, Physics at Morgan State University. Prior to his transition to Morgan State, he served 7 years as the chair of the Department of Physics and dual degree engineering program, and 20 years as the research director of the Materials and Optics Research Engineering Laboratory at Morehouse College, Atlanta, Georgia. Among his professional leadership experience, he is the immediate past president of both the National Society of Black Physicists and the Sigma Pi Sigma Physics Honor Society. Also, he has served more than 30 years as a combination of pastor of the Divine Unity Missionary Baptist Church, East Point, Georgia, Associate Minister of Antioch Baptist Church, North Atlanta, Georgia, and Associate Minister of New Shiloh Baptist Church in Baltimore, Maryland. As chair of physics and dual degree engineering program at Morehouse, his vision and leadership resulted in 7 consecutive years of the department being the U.S. #1 producer for underrepresented minorities with Bachelor's of Science in Physics, according to the American Institute of Physics, in conjunction to boasting the nation's most productive dual degree engineering program. Now at Morgan State, he is refocusing the department energy and efforts on the high 5: recruitment, retention, research, remodel, and removal. He is a strong proponent of STEM mentorship using methodologies of faculty to student, peer-to-peer, professional shadowing, life skills, coaching, and research apprenticeship. His current research interests include micro-nanolithography, extreme ultraviolet interferometry,
Don't worry about that.
materials, terahertz, imaging, nanostructures, characterization, and cross-phase optics. Dr. Rockward has received his BS in physics from Grambling State University, his 2 MS degrees, one from State University of New York, Albany, one from Georgia Institute of Technology, and his PhD in physics, Georgia Institute of Technology. To this distinguished panel, I say welcome.
Thank you.
With that said, we will not hesitate to the first question, which is, what factors allowed you or influenced you to pursue your academic and career path?
I could start with that. I have been fortunate enough in my life, and I'm in the point right now of writing my memoir. And I have, from my mother, who was an excellent mentor, even though uneducated, she taught me, I had my strong work ethic. And then I met my second great mentor, I think in 7th grade, who let me flourish and allowed me to do the things and read and do all the stuff that I really enjoyed doing. And then, of course, my math teacher in high school was just instrumental in my becoming a scientist and physicist. She removed me from the terminal track in my high school. Even though it was a segregated high school, we still had tracks, and I didn't realize that, nor did my parents. Were not educated to realize that. And so she pulled me out of the terminal track, which meant you would not go to college, into the college track, which led me to go on and get a PhD. And of course, I met several mentors in college, going to a historically Black college, who helped me along the way. So I've been lifted up by a large number of people, and that's been, I think, and I try to do that now for my students. I try to give them the kind of mentorship that I had as a young student and scholar.
Anybody else would like to chime in to support that?
I'm an old Southern fella, so I'm letting the ladies go first. That's just part of what my training was.
I can chime in. My father is an old Southern fellow too, so I appreciate that. For me, I grew up in Spanish Harlem here in New York City, and having Southern parents who really valued education, I was fortunate that they went really above and beyond to really identify programs, specialized programs in the area that we could participate in. So I remember being a 6th grader and taking a somewhat of an IQ test and being placed in a talented and gifted program. And then my mom finding out about a specialized science junior high school, the Isaac Newton High School for math and science, and then taking the standardized exams for the technical high schools here in New York City, and attended Brooklyn Tech. And so I'm sure there's probably a few folks on this call that are familiar with Brooklyn Tech, but that really gave me the foundation and love for science. My parents kind of kept us on track and, just made sure that we didn't stay out late, we had curfew, we did our homework and all that. And then, being able to connect with folks who really believed in me, particularly as an undergraduate student. I went to Cornell University, and that was kind of a culture shock. And so being fortunate enough that I connected with those in the community who looked like me and felt and made me feel as though they cared as much about me succeeding and graduating as they cared about themselves doing the same. And so I think just surrounding yourself with cheerleaders, identifying who they are first, and then surrounding yourself with people who want to see you succeed was really, at least in my case, really important.
Okay. The college experience is often an important time for many young people, and particularly Black students. And Dr. Maclin, you said that you went to an HBCU, and Ms. Johnson, you said that you went to Cornell, but you surrounded yourself with that support network of people who look like you. How significant was the role of the educators' racial congruency to your own, and how did it impact your success?
I
And
can
that's
start. That's the whole panel. Maybe we let some of the other colleagues chime in on that. But I wanted to give honor to my great physics mentor, Alexander Gardner. You may not know him, Willie, but he was a pioneer. He got his PhD in physics, the first in 1965 from University of North Carolina. Had gone to A&T as an undergraduate, and he was pivotal of many Black physicists in my generation. In fact, he had mentored more than 40 or 50 of the students who went on to get PhDs in physics. He was a giant in terms of mentoring, and I was just very fortunate to run into him my sophomore year in college when he came to be an assistant professor at North Carolina A&T, and he transformed the physics program there. We went from 5 students to 50 students in just a year. And so a lot of the great names that you hear, Ronald McNair, Johnny Richardson, Elvira Shaw, lots of the people who went on to get degrees in physics and medicine were his mentees. And so I adapted that style from him in terms of the number and the mentoring, the serious interest that I have in both recruiting and mentoring students.
Yeah, well, I mean, I echo with you on that, Dr. Macklin. It was mainly those who mentored me along the way. That mindset just continued along. Well, you see, me entering into physics and into science, and that first question wasn't because technically somebody else ushered me in there. It was because I wanted to play football. I didn't want to go do physics or science. I wanted to play football. I wanted to be a professional football player. And I had all the skills and physical skills and everything. I got recruited by LSU and a lot of other major D1 schools. But I wanted to play football for Coach Eddie Robinson at Granville. He was the winningest collegiate coach at the time. But all they offered me was a physics scholarship. So I took it and and walked on and made the team, and it went from there. And I asked the coach, I said, Coach, why you didn't recruit me? He said, well, and this way Coach Eddie Rob said, it's a little southern. He said, well, baby, we just didn't have the recruiting money to come after you. All the big boys was looking at you. And so I said, but Coach, all you had to do is just say so, and I would have came and played for you. But anyway, so long story short, I made the team, and about 2 weeks later, I quit the team because this linebacker hit me so hard. I said, okay, I got to stay in physics. That's paying my bills, So I kind of, but when in physics, I had a couple of professors at Grambling. One we call Dr. Two. His initials is Thomas William Odom.
Oh,
and
yes.
So
Dr. Odom, I knew well.
Yeah, Dr. Odom, right. Yeah,
I knew him well. Yeah.
He is the one that really, really, got me to see that physics and science is really a part of our nature, our culture, and that we shouldn't try to just because everybody else doesn't do it. You got to do what's best for you and with the talents that you have, and that you develop everything. And so not just your academic and your intellectual talent, you develop all the talents that you were given, God-given talents, and so that's what mentoring. I kind of do the same thing with all of my students. And I realized too, my mentors does not have to look like me. All of my mentors were not male, and all of them were not Black. Okay. Some of my best mentors were white counterparts. Some were female, even like today, Cynthia McIntyre. They showed that they cared about me. And they saw something in me. I trusted them enough to let them see something in me that I didn't see myself, and I allowed them to pull it out of me. And sometimes it was rough, but most of the time it was very pleasant. So,
Thank
and that's
you for
how
that.
I'm using my students today.
We appreciate the giving that not all your mentors look like you, so that our young people know to don't put aside the women and don't put aside people who are not necessarily people of color. However, HBCUs make up less than 2% of colleges and universities for which many of you on the panel attended. They produce 60% of engineers of color, 70% of dentists and physicians, 50% teachers of color, and 50% of all STEM graduates of color. So the question I have is that, given the challenges that many Black students face, how can we encourage more Black students, from student to faculty, administrators, and mentors, as they attend non-HBCUs, such as Brooklyn College and or Cornell?
Let me chime in on one of my concerns, and I've been around probably longer than most of you. I've been around physics programs and all for 50 years or more, and the issue, the concern that I have right now, and I have spoken to people about this, is the and it's not just at HBCUs, the continuing internationalization of our faculties in physics. I mean, there are very few people who look like Willie and me in physics departments, in the few physics departments that still exist at HBCUs. They are fast dwindling. Large number of Black colleges have gotten rid of their physics programs. And I think when the physics goes, the university, it really is, and I'm not being prejudiced about physics, but when the physics programs leave our universities, it really means a decline in the academic curriculum at that institution. And in the last 10 years, a large number of both, in Texas, for example, 5 or 6 years ago, you know this, Dr. Rockward, the whole state of Texas got rid of all of the physics programs at the HBCUs and the Hispanic Serving Institution in one slough. 5 schools, they just got rid of the physics programs. So, and and I'll give you another example. For example, I'll give you the example of Howard University. In the engineering program at Howard, of the more than 60 faculty members, there are only 3 Black women. There was a mass exodus of Black males about 5 years ago because they had a dean who was crazy. He stayed a couple of years, but he pretty much all of the big names in the engineering school left. They went someplace else, like Stephen Richardson. We both know him. Left and went to MIT, and now you have international faculty, both in almost all of the administrative positions at our HBCUs. So the climate has completely changed from when I was a student. And I'm dealing right now with students at Howard who, in COVID, they can't see the professor. They come to me, and I try to be as responsive as I can. I write letters. I get them summer internships, but they have no place to go. They feel lost. And this COVID is going to affect everybody. And unfortunately, it's going to affect young Black students, I think, the most.
So with that said, Dr. Macklin, I want to pose this question primarily to Ms. Johnson and Ms. Granville. Given that they are not at HBCUs, what is their presence like on those college campuses, so that young people can complete those degrees at Tandon or at Brooklyn College?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I was kind of paying deference because, I'm thinking, how did you let a sociologist in the room? But I hope that I have something of value to share. I am an HBCU graduate, and I want to agree with Dr. Rockward about sort of approaching the assumption that because someone is Black, that they're going to share your experience, your values, your way of looking at things. At Spelman, I was fortunate to have some of those mentors that did look like me. But when I went to grad school at a PWI, I was looking for people that looked like me, and I was not finding that connection, right? And so I had to pivot to thinking about, are there people that are living and sort of doing a career and living a lifestyle that I actually aspire to? And that led me to people that didn't look like me in many cases, but were doing the kinds of things I wanted to do as a sociologist, but also had the kind of ethics and values that I wanted to have in that career. Right. And I think that's sort of really important. I think at Brooklyn College, right, one thing to note, I am, as an assistant professor on the tenure track, I think we are now 40 out of a total 500 faculty. That's across all of the disciplines, right? Which means especially that for STEM careers, students are not going to see people that look like me. And it also means that I may have students who are not my major, but they've connected with me in some way. And here I am trying to find advice. And that might mean that I'm reaching out to people like you who've got the expertise in a very sort of specific way. And so I do think that one way that I'm challenging myself to be a little bit more helpful is to consider keeping and making these kinds of connections so that when I come across a student who I can't speak to in a disciplinary way, I know someone like the person who invited me here, which is Miss Tansy Silver, and I can say, oh, I know that person. You want to talk about energy? You want to think about sustainability? I can tap you in. And there we are creating a pipeline where there isn't one or one hasn't existed.
That's what we all have to do. We have to refer people into our networks. And that's what I try to do all the time. Yeah.
I think the challenge that I see, particularly with our Black male students, but just students in general, especially as it relates to STEM fields, is communicating the importance of things like mentoring, of seeking help, of not going it alone, right? Because I think oftentimes there's that cultural piece where, you've done this all along on your own, with the support of your family. And culturally, sometimes there's some degree of shame as it relates to participating in programs that are geared towards, providing you with the support you need to succeed. So oftentimes we find ourselves trying to, make the case for participation in these programs, because there's so many opportunities, particularly at NYU, but as many institutions try to address, the issues of gender, racial inequities. There's a lot of programs out there that have been developed to support, various different demographics. And what I've seen is the challenge of getting the students there, right? And so what I really sort of stress to students just in general, that, you're here not only to build your academic capital, but your social capital, your cultural capital.
Yeah.
You need to really take advantage of activities that are going to, build your confidence. You need to take risks. You need to ask questions. You need to take on leadership roles and, pursue all these new experiences and opportunities that you're paying for. One of the things I say to students oftentimes is, if you were going into a pizza shop and, you purchased the whole pizza pie, and you only ate one slice, you're leaving so much money on the table, as is the case in the college experience. So take advantage of all those other opportunities that will really enrich your undergraduate experience, connect you with all kinds of mentors, push you out of your comfort zone, explore minors, build other skills, transferable skills, because who's to say that you start off this path, that's going to be, the path you end up, because oftentimes it's not very linear. Success is not linear. It can be crooked, but that's okay. But just keep looking forward and keep taking advantage, of those opportunities available to you, because as particularly Black students, particularly Black males, they oftentimes don't have access to those those invisible support systems that exist. And so we try to encourage them to take advantage of those networks that we've created to provide the support, to be their cheerleaders so that they're successful at NYU. So that's what I would say in terms of encouraging students to get over any sort of pride or any hesitations that may exist around seeking out support, because that support is there for a reason.
Right. Well, let me speak as an African American male on that quickly. I'm just going to give a quick note for especially from a brother perspective. We got to get over this. I can do it myself. Mm. If you can do it yourself, you'll be there already. And that's what I tell all my students. I say, if you know all the math, then guess what? You wouldn't be taking this class. If you knew all the physics, if you knew all the sociology, if you knew all the information that's in this class, then guess what? You would have already done it. You have already had your degree, and you would have already moved on. But you don't. So just accept the fact I don't know this. That's why I'm in this class. And there's nothing wrong with not knowing. You know, ignorance is not the problem. It's when you're unable to learn. See, that's what it is. We are, if you are able to learn, hey, we're all ignorant of something because we don't know it all. No one knows it all, right? No one. But the key is, I don't know it, but I am willing to know. I want to know. And that's what you need. You need that drive. And hey, that drive is going to help you go to people, help you go to your professors, help you go to your tutors, help you go to your mentors, you know, your heroes and your sheroes who look like you, who don't look like you. Because you want to get the knowledge. You want to learn. And if you want to learn, we're here to help you make it go as far as you want to go.
Let me add to that. For the past 20 years, I have been advocating and been pretty successful. And when I advise students, I tell them as freshmen, I want you to have 3 experiences. I want you to have an experience at a national lab, at a major research university, and an international experience. And that broadens the scope for a large number of students. I've taken over 200 students abroad, many of whom never even been on an airplane, and their first ride is to Beijing. I mean, you know, or to Russia. I mean, so students, so we expand their vocabularies and teaching them Arabic and Chinese and Hindi. I mean, this has changed. It's changed my life, and it clearly has changed these students' lives. They have. I mean, really. It's just unbelievable how they transform in a very short period of time. And so, and the world of STEM is not just Black people. It's just not white people. It's a global experience. And so when you get that global experience, it means a whole lot to them. It's changed. It's really changed the way they look at the world. But going to a country and you're thrown into a family where you only can speak Hindi. Nobody's speaking anything else. And they come out, these kids, I mean, they come out and they speak in Hindi in 6-8 weeks. So we got to change the way we think about the global environment in which we exist.
I think so, but also, you know, making sure that we're communicating sort of the value of these experiences, you know, the value, the added value to them as a person in terms of building out their skill set. You know, so we do the same thing. We try to have information sessions about our summer undergraduate research program, our study away program, our internships, so that because we see such a disproportionately small number of Black students, especially Black male students, taking advantage of these opportunities. So we try to connect with those that do, so that they're not constantly hearing it from us. They're hearing it from their peers. The fact that they took advantage of it and, you know, really, and those experiences really changed their lives. So it's like making the case for the value of these kinds of opportunities.
But part of it is their fear of doing something different and that's out of their comfort zone. And so we need to make sure that our students are willing to get out of your comfort zone, do something different.
I want to just intercede at this point because as a writer of issues of race and Ms. Johnson, you've brought it up many times in terms of the demographic of Black males at risk, or I wish not to use the word risk, but not having the access and opportunity that should be afforded to them, and them not attending college in the same percentage of Black females or their white counterparts. What do you all suggest can help to reverse the trend of our Black male? We know the pipeline to prison still exists. We know that we're making strides in our high schools to create partnerships with dual degree programs, College Now, and so on and so forth in New York City, but we still have an issue. And what would you all suggest could be done to reverse the trends of our Black young men?
I could jump in that one quickly.
Yeah, you go for that.
Okay. We got to start along the entire pipeline, from the moment of their birth, and whether their dad is active in their life or not. My dad was not active in my life when him and my mom divorced when I was 4, and I'm number 6 of 8 kids. My mama raised all, and I'm using the word mama so we can get a clarity on it. My mama raised all 8 of us by herself, but she made sure one thing. She made sure, though I didn't have my father, my biological father in my life, she made sure I had other male figures and influences from the church to my uncles, to other good friends, and so she made sure that we had other male influences. And so it helped us to start looking at things from a different angle, a different perspective of that, as a full community raising a child. And then, because we losing a lot of our Black males in 8th grade. The 8th grade, the middle school, that's where a lot of them fall off. The little bit that you do have falls off. We got to continue to promote education from K, when they start kindergarten, before they start kindergarten, pre-K, on through. And tell them there's nothing wrong with learning. There's nothing wrong with that. You still can be cool and smooth and have all the pizzazz and bling while you're learning, okay? But not necessarily from the street perspective, because we already see the result of the street. The street, when you look at what you're going to get from the street, it has not changed. And it doesn't care what color you are or what race you are, okay? It's still going to get the same thing. So we got to pull it all the way through, and all of us got to see this as a community, not just my child. But hey, everybody, it's going to take a full village to raise this young man and this young lady, because technically, y'all, that same principle goes to all of our children. Male, female, white, Black, all of them. And all the kids, all of them need all experience so they can get to know who they are internally and be an asset to the world.
Organized activities, I think, is one of the things that keeps young people engaged. I didn't have to have organized activity because I grew up on a tobacco farm, so there was plenty of work for me to do. If I had idle hands or idle minds, I had to escape from the farm work to get to read a book and stuff. But these kids have lots of free time. And so we need to make sure that time that they have is occupied with something different. And that's why, of course, there are community centers, organized sports, of course, like my colleague here, Dr. Rockward, has talked about. The community can get involved. It doesn't need to be science, but it can turn into science. Chess club, and all that.
Thank you, Dr. Macklin. I wanted for Dr. Granville to get an opportunity.
Yes, of course.
Sure. I agree with both Dr. Macklin and Dr. Rockward. I have a godson who's about 8 years old, and he loves science. His favorite subject is math. He's doing really well in that. And I've started thinking, right, what happens and where is it that they sort of lose that focus on that? And I do think, if they've made it to my classroom, that they've already sort of beat the odds in a sense. And so I do agree that it's earlier in the pipeline. And I think some of it has to do with what happens in classroom interactions. I think a lot about being really encouraged in my classroom spaces. I went to Philippa Schuyler. I can think back to some of the classes and teachers that I had and how encouraging it was. I'm also Jamaican born, right? So I also had very strong parenting at home. That was sort of like education is the way, education is the key. And I do think that that's a part of it, that there's something about the messaging that our young Black men are getting that says that education is not really the way to become successful. And there are a lot of other distractions and other ways that you can become successful. So I do think we have to rethink what's the value in going to college and getting a degree. What are the careers? And I do think this goes back to our other discussion about mentors. Seeing someone who looks like you doing something is transformative. I didn't know what a PhD was or a sociology professor was until I walked into the classroom in college. And then it opened up this wide set of possibilities. So to me as a sociologist, it's never one thing, it's all of these things. It's what's happening K through 12. It's what are the opportunities that we're getting? What are the messages that our Black men are getting? And also, right, where's the value for us in actual education? We are in perilous times, right? Dr. Macklin talked about physics departments being, right, disappearing. And I think we have to really consider, right, are we in a nation that does value education in the way that it says it does? Because our investments say something otherwise, right? So this is a large multi-level project in that sense.
Ms. Johnson, do you care to add anything to that?
I think I would agree with everything that was mentioned. I think getting out there into the community, I think a sustained presence in the community is impactful. Through our K through 12 STEM Center, it used to be really focused on these sort of one-off opportunities where, you go through this big recruitment effort to hopefully see an increase in diversity of participants, but do you maintain that connection after they've completed the program, right? So that interest that you've inspired is sustained over time. And when we talk about transition points, we lose folks at various points in their in points of transition in their lives, whether it's 8th grade or from high school to college, and it's because those relationships that have been built sometimes are very surface level, and I'm talking about relationships that institutions, universities have built within the community seem very surface level. And so there's no, the sustained presence is sort of missing. So I think, getting out there, in the community is impactful. I think I was thinking about what you said, Ms. Granville, about sort of the value of education. My parents grew up in the South, and so I definitely was instilled with the value of going to college, but no one ever talked about what happened afterwards. Right? So it was this big buildup to make it into college, and there was no talk about like careers or being able to get a doctoral degree or going even to a master's program. It was always so focused on just making that transition, but not what happens afterwards. So I think once we get them into college, it's also having those early discussions about career aspirations, about career pathways, and connecting them with individuals that can take that conversation even further, and allowing them the opportunities to shadow, to see what it looks like on the other side after they've graduated.
That is so critical, Ms. Johnson, in terms of the career. As you all may know, I am the assistant principal, co-principal of Bedford Academy High School here in Brooklyn, and Tandon is not too far. So you and I will definitely talk, and Brooklyn College as well, because what we've been able to do is really bring in those opportunities to our students. But it's not enough just to the students of Bedford Academy, right? It needs to go beyond that, because what we see is that as much as we push, we have mentoring and those things that will open up their minds to different aspects and different perspectives and opportunities. Once they leave us or when they go home, it sometimes changes. And so we have to keep building them up, as Ms. Dr. Granville says, to get them to not only prepare for college, but to overcome those challenges during and after. So we always tell them, Bedford is always home. Even if you're at the Gramblin's, the Brooklyn colleges, the NYUs. But one of the things that they often come back and said is, we asked really, is did we prepare them? And so oftentimes, because we are a HBCU of high schools, and I say that proudly, we are taking young people of color and building their spirits to not only be ready for an HBCU, but also a Cornell, and be ready for the PWIs out there. But what happens, and I asked the question, how does the lack in the diversity of faculty members influence the diversity of the student population at the universities that they're going to, and the successes of the students from underrepresented communities.
Well, that's a real challenge. And the question is the institutional. I know Dr. Rockwood and I both have initiated programs at Black colleges, and we work like crazy to get it done. I've initiated a PhD program at Hampton, and I initiated an optical engineering at Norfolk State. And I was working 12 to 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, because I recruited students just like Coach does. I go and sat at the kitchen table with the parents. Yeah. I tell them why it's important to send your student to me, and then what I will deliver once you do that. I never single promise. But the people who came after me, they said, well, I can't recruit like she does. Who's going to work like that? Who's going to work like a crazy person out here getting students? When I left the program, what does happen? It falls apart. Because you can't sustain that high level of effort that it takes to create a program forever. You have to walk away for your own sanity. Otherwise, but I do tell my students that I am your mentor for life. If you come into my fold, I'm your mentor for life. Yeah. And not very many people do that. My mentor, Alex Gardner, told me the same thing as a sophomore in college. He said, I'm your mentor for life. And he was. So anytime I had an issue in physics, I would call Dr. Gardner, and he would tell me, he would give me advice. Well, this is your next step. This is who you need to contact. And not enough people are doing that. And that's the problem, because I'm now spending more time playing golf than I do doing physics. That's the stage of my life. That's where I am.
Good for you. Sounds like you've earned that, right?
I echo with you, Dr. Macklin. It's a labor of love.
Yes, exactly.
It's a labor of love, but it cannot be sustained by one person.
No,
I do the same exact thing. And what gets us sometimes, and what gets me lots of time, is that I receive more unnecessarily challenges at the HBCU.
Yes, exactly.
Administrative wise.
Exactly.
Administrative wise, to get this program going, they're gonna only benefit them. Benefit them as a collective. And you're like, man, I'm fighting to get them in. So I'm dealing with all the dynamics externally. And then I have fights within. Okay, because of other issues too. And I'm like, some of them are personal, but the bottom line is you only can sustain that for so long. And but the labor, the love for what you're doing, and like Dr. Macklin said, many of my mentees, I used to say the same thing, Dr. Macklin, about I will be your mentor for life. But I also told them too, I said, but when you get to a certain point, you can become my mentor too.
Exactly.
I said, so mentoring is not just a vertical thing. It's really a horizontal thing.
Reciprocal.
We're going to interact for a while. Yes, I'm going to be pouring more into you than you're going to pour into me. But at some point,
you need to do
along your journey, I tell them, at some point, you're going to start pouring back into me.
Exactly.
And that's my investment in you. And we go beyond the mentorship relationship to more of a family relationship, because many of my mentors, when mentees when I was at Morehouse, a lot of them guys, they're up and young ladies who was at Spelman will come on over, and they're up and doing great and well, and they're calling me back, Dr. Rock. I said, look, you can't call me no Dr. Rock no more. You're not my student. You my colleague. So you call me either Willie or you call me Rock. You okay? And so we tease, we joke about that. Yeah. But you gotta need that, and the only way we're gonna kind of help that is that we gotta get some more in there who understands you won't get paid for this.
No,
it's a labor of love. It's something you are invested and you're sacrificing, putting into your community, into these students who you had to go and recruit. Mm-hmm. I used to recruit at Morehouse all across at science and technology schools, all high schools across the country. And some of those same students, some of them came and some of them didn't. But I told them, I said, even if you don't come to Morehouse, go somewhere. If you don't come to Morgan, go to college somewhere. And if you go in STEM, you ain't gonna have to pay.
Yeah, exactly. They don't understand that.
And they'll get paid after they graduate very nicely. But I think we also, like, one of the things that we're trying to do is, since, and I don't remember who it was that stated the stats in terms of the percentage of, engineers, doctors, folks with their doctoral degrees coming from the HBCUs, is it's important and imperative of those folks, especially people of color that work at predominantly white institutions, to make those partnerships. So one of the things we're trying to do is create a partnership right now with the AUCC, Atlanta University Consortium of colleges. I always get it wrong, but we're trying to create a 3-2 program, not just so that we have more students coming in, but also so that we can start having conversations with the faculty. We can start having the faculty come in and meet with our students, because where diversity is missing on the faculty level at NYU, we know it exists at the HBCU. So we're looking at opportunities to make those connections, to bring faculty of color to the school, and through panels, through seminar series, and then explaining or communicating the value proposition with our, to our current students and participating in those events, because it provides you then with an opportunity to see people like Dr. Rockward, Dr. Macklin, Dr. Granville. I mean, I feel really, really humbled to be on a panel with such, esteemed panelists, but it makes me freaking thrilled to know that there's more people that I can connect with, right? So as I'm trying to develop those connections, those networks, build a village, that there's more folks that we're adding. So it's not just falling on me and my few colleagues at Tandon that are doing the work, right? Because there's interest in growing these programs, but it's sort of like, okay, how do we tap into other kinds of resources we need to get them going?
Let me just say,
go ahead, Dr. Macklin.
Creation of programs is not free, but many people think that when they look at a successful program, they don't even consider the hard work. We also need to form our own partnerships, because a lot of the work that you're talking about doing or creating, somebody has already done it somewhere. So we need to, wherever they are, and bring them into the fold. And that's not happening enough, because the big money is for partnerships, and that's one of the reasons I started this new not-for-profit company with my colleague who's also at Howard McStem, is to help women and minorities find where those partnerships are and connect them to that. And I would love to talk to you further, Ms. Johnson, about how I might work with you and help you, because I probably, it's been blood, sweat, and tears, but I've done a whole lot of stuff. I mean, and I'm willing to share that with others. I've always been willing to share, and people steal a whole lot of my ideas. I'm dealing with a situation right now where I know people stole my idea. The idea of virtual mentoring, I proposed 25 years ago, and somebody took my idea and made it real. I didn't have any resources. I put it in a proposal, SF, and next thing I know, somebody had it and gone.
I want to ask a question in terms of, because Dr. Granville not only writes about issues of race, but also immigration and culture. And, I know for me, I'm first generation American in the United States from immigrant parents. And just navigating the world of college and the world of going to college, choosing a major, that was in itself a challenge, because my mom didn't want me to be an educator. She wanted me to be, there were only 3 options: engineer, medicine, and law. Everything else out the window. But I thought my biggest impact would be in education. And so I throw that to Dr. Granville, because what is she seeing in the university, and what is her research saying about the students, especially with DACA and Dreamers and all of those components?
I really love that question, Dr. LaVache. I don't do work in social education around immigrants, but as part of my work, I'm definitely really intrigued by a couple of ways in which, sort of the immigrant status is discussed. Like on the one hand, we love celebrating immigrants, regardless of their legal status, because when they do well, when they do well in education, simply because it supports this idea that the American dream is about going to college, getting a degree, and being able to live and facilitate the life that you would like. And immigrants are one of the best examples of that, right? One of the sociologists I love talks about the education gospel, and we get that great messaging. My parents, I didn't even get the engineer option. It was doctor or lawyer. And when I started to pivot to sociology, everybody was like, you'll never make any money, right? You won't make any money. I do pretty well for myself. I'm all right, y'all, in case they were concerned. But I do think that one of the things universities are not really considering right now is that to be a student and an immigrant dealing with legal status issues or all of that other stuff is a lot, right? Especially if you are adjusting to life in America. I remember coming at 9 and still figuring out that I couldn't say patwa certain kinds of words in a classroom, right? I'm like, somebody juke me. And the teacher's like, what word is that, right? The word was poke. So there's a lot of adjustments that you may be making. And if there are actual resources in our schools to help students sort of adjust, and that's not just about maybe English as a second language, but it's actually just about study habits, about the pace of life in America, which is a lot different, in terms of how education systems work. And so I think, that narrative that Black immigrants especially, or that immigrants are doing well, needs to be unpacked a little bit more because it is at significant cost. I think the other end of that is you can also end up having taken this route without actually knowing what you really wanted to do. And so I see a lot of folks who are in my age range, which is mid 30s, somewhere around there, who are pivoting, right? And they've gotten these degrees and they're in these fields and careers that look really successful from the outside, but they're not actually happy because they really actually didn't take the time to figure out what they really want. And I think it goes back to our larger conversation, which is having the opportunity to explore, to figure out, right? Do you like something in STEM? Is that open to you? And there are a lot of careers out there that I, find out about every day, but I'm like, how did you even get that career? Because it's not listed in a catalog. It's not in a big occupational category. And the way you get in is by knowing someone or being able to be, right, invited into a community or a network. And so I do think, Black, immigrant students are doing well. They're thriving despite a lot of adversity, and universities can do more for them. But I also think we're doing them a disservice by not really thinking about the sort of complexities of what their situation is.
Thank you for that, Dr. Granville. I think it's so important that you mentioned they're making decisions and they're not sure, and then they're expending so much money doing so. With that said, is there any financial advice you wish you had been given before or directly after you graduated? This could be related to, the loans, or the Dr. Macklin said, definitely doing research, being in a national lab, or traveling internationally. So this is almost a hodgepodge of a question, because it's asking about what do you do after college when you have the student loans, and there's still so much to explore given that you've given that degree, whether it's a fellowship, whether it's, or rather you earned that degree, a fellowship or career.
Yeah.
Let me just say, done it right. When you finish college and you're a STEM major, you should have any college debt. If you've gotten the right advice, there should be no college debt. And that's the question. That's the issue that we need to, for example, I have my students, I teach a STEM professionalization course where we introduce the ideas of research. We also talk about, I have students can go into they can take at the end of their freshman year, if they want to, they can take a wealth management summer internship. Some of them do go with the largest investment companies in the world, and they learn that these investment companies, not only do they talk about making money, but they also have projects and project management. I have a student who was a poster boy 3 years ago. He was a mechanical engineering major. He took his first internship with a big wealth management company. So they get the idea of how this little money that I have, how do I manage it? put it in a Roth IRA, put 10% in your Roth IRA as a freshman. And guess what? When you're my age, you're going to have lots of money. You're going to have, and it's all tax-free if you've done it right. So, but the kids aren't getting that information. And we have got to do something about the serious wealth gap. Kids don't get that information. My mentor in the sophomore, he told me, it was $12 a year. He said, I want you to start reading Kiplinger's Personal Finance. Where am I going to get $12? I managed to get it. It's still $12, and I still subscribe to it 60 years later. It was one of the best investments I've ever made because it taught me about money and all the things you do and how you manage it and all that stuff. But our students don't know that and we're going to continue to have a wealth gap if we're not teaching them in a holistic manner. And that's one of the things I think we need to do.
And let me add to that, Dr. Macklin, too, is that also two things. One, while you are undergrad, every single semester you apply to at least 5 scholarships, 5 of them. Even if there's 5 components to make that scholarship and you only meet 3 of those 5, apply anyway. Scholarship is free money. You don't pay it back. All right. And then many times students don't want to apply it. They want somebody else to apply it for them. No, you get out, apply, because you're going to get, I used to get scholarships when I was in undergrad, and I forgot I applied to. But when $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000 check comes in my name, I'm so what? I was the only one that applied. I'm happy. I'm going along with spending. But it also teaches me how to start managing the funds that I do get. Okay. And stop letting money control you. Stop letting people control you. Now, the second thing I want to give to you, going to start, in order to be able to control your money, you got to control you. Go back to high school. What was hurting a lot of our seniors and juniors, and they're getting some bad advice. Don't meet the minimum. You are not the average student. So stop doing just the minimum. I know the minimum is that you only get to do 2 years of mathematics. So what? You did those 2 years. Keep going. Keep taking math. Math every single year. You a senior, taking math, because while you're in high school, it's going to open up your doors when you go to college, so you can take other things and do other things. Okay, and get scholarships. So what, you may not become a STEM major or whatever. That's fine, but have all those. Show them that I can learn. See, when we go into, many of our students go into majors in college because they didn't do the credentialing, getting their credentials together or their foundations together in high school. They took the easy route out. Push yourself in high school. Take those tough classes. I don't care if you make a C in them. Take them. Because what it does is expose you and it lets colleges see. I'm talking about not just HBCUs. I'm talking about PWI colleges. They see that you have the potential. That's what they got to see in you. They got to see your potential, and they only going to see it through your transcript and some of the things you write in your personal statement, but let them see it mostly in your transcript, because then they're going to offer you a scholarship, and and it builds from there. But you got to be willing to take extra stuff while you're in high school.
Let me say one of the things. I've been doing this now for at least 10 years. Is I run what I call a STEM professionalization workshop. I have a very prescribed way to write that resume, but I also have that technical personal statement that I address. These are freshmen and sophomores. I say you address intellectual merit. They say, what is that? And impact. Those are the criteria that all NSF Foundation grants are based on. So when they write that technical statement with that intellectual merit and personal and broader impact, when they apply for summer internships, people are so impressed. I've had freshman students that come back to me and say, they offered me a summer internship hardly without an interview, because you had all the right stuff when you went there. And I've given you an example of that in my presentation. It's so important that our students, because when they go for the graduate fellowship, what do they want? They want that personal technical statement. And it doesn't say, I come from Jackson, Mississippi, and I grew up on a farm. It's all about what are the technical skills that got you here, where you are. And then how do you expect those technical skills, how do you expect to use them? That's what it really means. But they never heard. Kids don't hear that until they get to be seniors in college or graduate school. It's almost too late, So we need to introduce these things right away, early, early on, and that's what I try to do. All the life lessons that I've learned, I try to share it early on with the students. Even freshmen, some high school kids can learn this. And I'd be glad to come to your school, Dr. LaVache, and come up to New York.
I welcome you. I welcome you. Yes,
I'm going to be in New York on March 1st. I'm going to I've never been to Collegiate, and I'm going to be up there March 1st, and I would
How
just
early are you going to be, and how long are you staying for?
I'm just staying overnight, but I'm going to have probably a little free time so we can connect. I would gladly come to your school.
Absolutely. In fact, I welcome everyone on this panel to please come to Bedford. Dr. Granville, Ms. Johnson, Dr. Rockward, please. It would be my joy and pleasure to host you and have you meet our students, because a lot of what you shared is what we do. Trying to get them ready for the world. And Dr. Granville, you're absolutely right when you said there are other opportunities. However, our focus is university studies, even if they choose a different path once they leave us. But with that said, I want to thank this panel of distinguished professionals, educators, mentors. We are the problem solvers. The answer is in this room, and I humbly say I learn from my elders and those that are not my elders, because it is that collective village that must make the difference for the children that we service, the scholars that we service, the young people we want to be the change agents once we are no longer around. With that said, I thank you for being here. Thank you for being here and spending the hour with us. Many of my students were logged in their classes to this presentation because I needed them to hear and see Black excellence before them. And to all of you, thank you for today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us and let us talk.
Okay.
Yeah.